Okay, so I'm going to begin. Thank you everyone for joining us. Again, my apologies, my connectivity has not been wonderful this afternoon. My name is Jennifer Grossman. I'm the Coordinator of Research and Evaluation for the Higher Education Policy Commission. I'm pleased to introduce our financial update. Before we get started, I'd like for you to put whatever questions you have in the session chat box that's right to the right of your screen. We'll address any questions and answers section that comes in at the end of the presentation. But first, I'd love to introduce our speaker. Ms. Tana Pindell is the Financial Aid Manager at the West Virginia Higher Education Policy Commission. She is responsible for the day-to-day coordination and administration of the Promise Scholarship Program and the Higher Education Adult Part-Time Student Grant Program, which provides financial assistance of over $50 million in state funding for over 13,000 students. She also trains and develops institutional financial aid staff, high school counselors, and those involved in access to higher education, and ensures that institutional compliance with West Virginia state regulations pertaining to financial aid programs. Welcome, Tana. I turn it over to you.
Thank you so much. So I know I had a little bit of trouble hearing that, so I'll introduce myself again. My name is Tana Pindell. I'm a financial aid manager for the West Virginia Higher Education Policy Commission, as well as the West Virginia Community and Technical College System. So I'm going to provide the state financial aid update today, and we're going to go over our state financial aid programs, as well as some events and resources that are useful as a high school counselor that's dealing with seniors and any parts of the college going process, but especially financial aid. So we're going to start right in. The most important thing for students to do for financial aid is fill out the FAFSA. So the FAFSA is the free application for federal student aid. And so that can be found at fafsa.gov. It becomes available for the class of 2023 on October 1st, 2021. So a few things to note for students who are filling out the FAFSA. They want to make sure that they're filling out the correct year. So they're going to be filling it out for the year that they're actually enrolling in college, because in any given time when you go to fill out the FAFSA, there's going to be more than one academic year available. So keep note of that. But the FAFSA is the most important application that a student needs to fill out to help them receive financial aid to go to college. One of the reasons is to determine if they qualify for certain types of federal financial aid, such as the Pell Grant program. So the federal Pell Grant program for this current academic year, the maximum award is $6,495. For anyone with the EFC, up to $5,711. And so the FAFSA helps us determine what a student's EFC is, or expected family contribution, and that determines whether or not they qualify for certain types of need-based financial aid at the federal and state level. And of course, for the Pell Grant, this is a nice chunk of change, and it would certainly help students to be able to go to school for up to 12 full-time semesters. It also helps us determine whether or not a student qualifies for certain state aid programs. And you can see we have several here, but it is part of the application process to qualify for state financial aid programs as well. So it's an important document to get filled out. So each year, the Policy Commission sets a FAFSA completion rate goal for high school seniors. And we know that the past year, 2021-22, it was a difficult year for students of all ages, but especially those seniors. So we did have a lot of trouble getting students to actually fill out the FAFSA and fill out our state financial aid applications in general. So we had a goal of 65% this year, and the most recent completion rate was 52.7%. So we were definitely lower than we would like to be. And next year, we certainly want to make sure that we get students to fill out the FAFSA, because it is very important for them to do so if they do plan to pursue any type of post-secondary education. We have the schools listed here who did complete our 65% goal, so yay for them. And usually as part of this effort, we do have competitions and different prizes that schools can participate in, and students can certainly participate in to see, just to give them some incentive to fill out the FAFSA. So our office and as an agency, we offer lots of different outreach activities. We are going to go back.
And I don't know if you can hear me, but your slides are not progressing.
Oh, it's not progressing. Okay. Let's try again. Can you see it now?
You see outreach activities.
Okay. Okay, great. So for this year, we are going to go back to in-person events. We will have an outreach counselor to help with those efforts. We offer financial aid night presentations, and that's where we will actually come out to your school during the evening and share a PowerPoint presentation regarding a general financial aid overview for your seniors and for their families, so their parents can come as well. We also do FAFSA workshops where we will come in to the school if you have a computer lab that's open, and families can fill out the FAFSA, and we'll be there to assist them with that. So the limit is 3 events per school year. And so we do that so we can reach all the different schools as well. We're also going to offer virtual. We'll continue with our virtual webinar series. And so we do several different events throughout the academic year for students just related to financial aid and our programs specifically. And I'll go over those in just a second. If you missed the webinars, everything's available on YouTube, on the CFWV YouTube channel. It's also shared through social media like Facebook on the CFWV page, so you can certainly go back there and find those. If students or families can't be there live, they can go back and view those later. We also offer one-on-one assistance to help students remotely through a screen sharing technology. And we have other initiatives, including the data share. We have our financial aid hotline. We have a social media press kit, text campaign, and high school counselor workshops. And so we're going to go over that a little bit more in depth. But to schedule an in-person event for the upcoming year, you'll want to contact Karen Martin in our office, and her email is listed, karen.martin@wvhupc, or you can call our office as well. I'm just going to keep my screen in this share mode so actually I can see what you all are able to see as well. Okay, so first, the high school counselor workshops. In September, we'll be offering those again, and there's usually around like 8 to 10 per year. We are going to have virtual sessions, and we'll also have in-person sessions as well. So if you can't do the one in your area, you may be able to do a virtual one at another time. The registration will become available on August 1st for the high school counselor workshop. So look for emails from our office, from Karen Martin, and also from the Department of Ed. We'll send it through the counselor listserv there as well. This initiative is sponsored through WVASFA, which is the West Virginia Association of Student Financial Aid Administrators in our state. And it goes a lot more in depth for the FAFSA, federal student aid, state aid, and we would recommend it for any high school counselor that's dealing with seniors or counselor that is new to the process. Our webinars, so this year we'll be doing the virtual webinar series again, and you can see the dates, and these will be posted on CFWV, so don't feel like you have to write them down, and we'll certainly share them with you as soon as we have the official schedule available. But this is what we have for now. The 101 event will be several dates throughout the year. We do it around once a month until we get to the promise application deadline. We're also doing one for renewal for students who already have state financial aid programs, and it'll just be an overview of the renewal requirements for each of our programs. FAFSA line by line, this would be very useful for seniors and families if they're filling out the FAFSA for the first time, and it literally goes through every step of the process on how you fill out the FAFSA, and page by page will show you how to go through that process, so that'll be a useful tool as well. The FAFSA Q&A will be just for general questions about the FAFSA or other financial aid, and it's close to our March 1st deadline for most of our programs. And then at the end of the year, we always do a Financial Aid 101 webinar for juniors who will be rising seniors the following fall. So we do plan to do that again as well. Again, this information is always available on CFWV. You can see the schedule. You can click for the schedule, and it's always on the front page towards the bottom. The community calendar is there as well as future workshops that are set to be scheduled. This is a snippet of what the community calendar looks like. And you can see we don't have any events for July, but once we get to the fall, all the events related to college and financial aid will be shared there. So all of our events are open to the public, so other students could come in from other schools or the community if they want that information or need help with the FAFSA or financial aid in general. I'm sorry, the PowerPoint looks a little bit funny since I'm not completely sharing it as a slideshow, but we're going to work with it so I can see what's going on and I can see if you all have questions. Okay, the Text for Success campaign, this is offered through CFWV, and this is for students to receive college counseling by text message. And so we know that's a great way to communicate with our students because that's how they communicate with each other. And so they'll receive texts about the process, the college going process. It'll check up on them. Have they done certain things? Have they applied at the correct time? This is a great free tool for students to receive information about not only financial aid, but just the college going process in general. So I definitely recommend it for seniors to utilize. If they want to sign up for it, this is on the Promise front page, and then also a link to our webinar recordings. And so that will take them to our YouTube page. The CFWV YouTube page, and they can see any of the webinars that we have done previously. They'll be recorded and posted there for students and family to be able to utilize in the future. We also have on Facebook. So any of our live events are shared live on the CFWV Facebook page. And so if you go to the Facebook page and click on videos, you'll be able to see previous recordings. So even if students can't get there when it's live, they can still go back and view that at a later time. And we've noticed over the past year, that's where a lot of students are viewing the information is on the CFWV page. We also have the social press kit. This is great. It's new. This is a great tool if you have your own high school CFWB page. If you have your own high school Facebook page, you can utilize the tools on the social press kit to share. And it's as simple as copy and paste technology. So if you go to the socialpresskit.com/CFWV, you'll be able to see posts specifically for our programs related to the Promise Scholarship, Invest, the Higher Ed Grant. So they are program specific, and some of them are just general information about the FAFSA. But you can click that, copy, and it'll automatically share it to your timeline if you paste it on your Facebook page or you click the button and you're signed in. So it's a great and easy tool to use to share that information with your students. Here's some additional ones. So you can see we have some posts about the FAFSA and the Higher Ed Grant. And then if you look at the top over here, you can see how you can get to the different programs just to see what other information and posts we have that you can share that's available. We also made it to TikTok this year. So this was the first time that we've ever had a marketing campaign, but we're trying to reach the students where they are, and we know they're on TikTok. So hopefully we'll be able to do that again for the upcoming year to try to reach the students, because it was a lot of fun to see that and see the students engage with it. We also offer FAFSA assistance. And so through screen share technology, we can work one-on-one with the families to fill out the FAFSA. So if they can't come to a FAFSA workshop, we can do this one-on-one with them to help them fill out the FAFSA otherwise. And then we also have our helpline, which is available Monday through Friday, 8 to 5. And it's our line, and I know it's a little bit small to see, but it's it'll be posted at the end, and it's 304-558-4618. So it's our main line for all of our programs. That's how you can get the information for the FAFSA helpline or just the financial aid helpline in general. We also have FAMS, and so FAMS is the Financial Aid Management System. This allows counselors to view 3 different things: who's applied for Promise, so you can see your current year's Promise Scholarship applications, and you can also see who is eligible, and so it is live data. So what we have on file currently is going to be what you see on FAMS for students who have applied. If they haven't applied, they won't show up. And then we also have the FAFSA status of students if you are participating in the FAFSA data share, which we'll go over in just a second as well. So the FAFSA data share is a signed agreement between our office and the counties and schools, where you can view which students at your specific school have actually filed the FAFSA. And so for public high school students, we use the grade information that comes into our office from the Department of Education. And so we look at 4 different fields: first name, last name, birth date, zip code. If those match and a student's filed a FAFSA, they'll show up within our system as completed the FAFSA. If something is different between WEVIS and what they put on their FAFSA, if they moved and their zip code changes, they won't show up because all 4 fields have to match perfectly for them to show up. But you can update that information in WEVIS, and it'll be updated later. And you also have the ability to upload your own CSV file to update that information sooner if that's something that you do want to view sooner. This is a little screenshot of what the FAFSA data share looks like. I know it's tiny, I'm sorry, but this is what FAMS looks like. And there's a little FAFSA upload tool, and then there's a FAFSA data share. So you click on that and you would see this information related to the students. And so it does show the students' information that we have on file: last name, first name, birth date, zip code. Then their status will be whether or not they've completed the FAFSA, haven't completed the FAFSA. If there's an issue with the FAFSA, it will show incomplete. And then they would know that they need to go back to the FAFSA website to resolve that. The date they submitted. And then also if they haven't completed the FAFSA, it would say no FAFSA as well. And then the last thing, it'll show if they've been selected for verification. And so if they've been selected for verification, they need to contact the college that they plan to attend and just make sure that they're providing documentation. That just means they're going to have to document their income and other information that they've provided on the FAFSA to their school. So if you would want to upload a file for your students because something isn't matching up, or you're not a public school, you can certainly do that. It just has to be in a CSV file format, and it has to have our certain file specifications. And so we can certainly work with you so you're able to do that. And this is a screen that just shows where you would upload. And I know it's so tiny that it's hard to see, but you have a browse button where you can see what you've uploaded, and then an upload button. And then if you've uploaded it, it'll show right here if it has been uploaded successfully or not. So the other big announcement, if you were on here this morning, our new website for our state financial aid programs, College for West Virginia, it was posted. And so this is just showing you what it looks like from the CFWV page. If you click on financial aid planning, it'll take you to the new site. So from here, you can see all the state financial aid programs by clicking on programs. And you can also have access to all the old tools that used to be there, like the scholarship search, if you click on financial aid tools. So just be aware of that. And certainly if you sign up for the counselor workshops in the fall, we'll be going through that a little more in depth to help you get through the process. But we're really excited about it. State financial aid programs. These are our programs that we oversee in our office. We've been very lucky that our funding hasn't been cut for our state financial aid programs. And so we are able to help lots of students go to school and assist them in the process. And our office does oversee over $100 million in funding in financial aid every year. And so we see a lot of applications and we help a lot of students. So we're going to dive in a little bit about our specific programs, and we're going to start with Promise. And so the eligibility requirements for Promise, a student must meet them all to qualify. So we don't pick and choose who is eligible for the Promise Scholarship. Either they meet the requirements or they don't. And of course, all the requirements are listed on the CFWV page. That link will still work, cfwv.com/promise. It'll take you directly to the Promise homepage so you can find information. And if you're not aware, the Promise Scholarship is our state's merit-based scholarship program for West Virginia residents to attend college in West Virginia. So the application requirements for the Promise, there's two parts. A student has to fill out the FAFSA, and it would have to be the correct year FAFSA, as well as the Promise Scholarship application by March 1st. So for the class of 2022, the deadline will be March 1st, 2022. And you can see they complete the FAFSA at FAFSA.gov, and the Promise Scholarship application link can be found on the CFWV website. So students who miss the deadline, they can apply as a late applicant, and they would be considered for a spring 2023 award. So they wouldn't be eligible for the fall, but they could qualify for the spring of the following semester. Those awards are contingent upon funding, so we do encourage students to apply by the deadline, because if we would ever be limited on funding, we may not be able to make those awards for the late applicants. Okay, there's also GPA requirements for students. It also has two parts. And so a student has to have a 3.0 overall, a 3.0 in their core coursework. The core only includes English, math, science, and history. So the core GPA is a cumulative GPA, but it's only going to include those 4 subject areas. And it does have to be a 3.0. If it's 2.9, we're not going to round up. If it's 2.99999, we don't round up. So it does have to be a 3.0 for a student to qualify. Students can qualify with 6th or 7th semester grade information, but they must maintain their eligibility through their final semester. And so on the flip of that, if a student doesn't qualify with their 6th or 7th semester grades, but their final grades qualify, they can get eligibility at that point. So if they didn't qualify previously, they can qualify with their final grades. Grades are automatically received for all public high school students through the grade file submission. And so if you're familiar with that, it's on Weavis. It's the prm.dta file. It is submitted for every school, but it depends on the county. In some counties, they'll do it at the county level, and then in other counties, they will do it at the school level. So a lot of times the counselors are the ones filling this out for students. And so if you're filling it out for students, we do have some helpful tools that we'll go over in a little bit about that. The only exception for not receiving the grades that you should be aware of is for early graduates. And so if they're not coded as a senior at a public high school, we're not going to receive their grades. And then also if they're in the option pathway, we may receive their grades, but a lot of the times their core GPA won't come through properly. So if they're either an early graduate or in the option pathway, we may ask that you send a grade report form and a final transcript just to verify that they meet the GPA requirements. All other applicants must provide a grade report form and a transcript for us to assess their eligibility. And that's anyone attending a private high school, homeschool, commuters, military dependents, or those who are actually enlisted in the military themselves. There's also an ACT or SAT requirement, and so I emphasize the or. They don't have to qualify on both. They only have to meet the qualifications on the ACT or the SAT. For the class of 2022, the requirement will be a 22 with a 20 in each subject area, an 1100 total on the SAT with a 530 in the evidence-based reading and writing, and a 520 in the math. It has been approved for the class of 2022 that we will allow students to continue to super score. So that was a modification made for 2021, and students in the class of 2022 can also qualify with a super score, but it will be under the 2022 composite score and the test score requirements that you see listed. The final test dates to qualify for 2022 is July of 2022 and June of 2022 for the SAT. So those are the final test dates to qualify. They still have to apply by the March 1st deadline. So even if they don't have a qualifying ACT or SAT score, they do need to meet the application deadline, which is March 1st. So the current class of 2021, the deadline was the ACT, SAT test score deadline was extended through October 31st. So for 2021, students will have until October to try to meet the eligible score requirement, and they can do that either on the national test for the ACT or the SAT, and it was approved for them to do the ACT on campus. There isn't an SAT on campus. That's why it isn't an option for students to qualify. There's no such thing offered. But students can still utilize the governor's program where they can take one free ACT on-campus exam. That is only for the class of 2021. They do have to have already applied for Promise, and they cannot have an eligible test score already. So if you know anyone in the class of 2021 that's still interested in utilizing this, they can still do so through October of 2021. Again, super scoring is permitted for the class of 2022. We're not sure if it'll be permitted after that. The requirements do have to be approved annually. So we'll let you know if it'll continue on after for the class of 2023. And then of course the application deadline was extended for the class of 2021, but it is going back to March 1st for the class of 2022. So keep that in mind. The other thing I want to go over again is the modification for the requirement. So the ACT was lowered for the class of 2021 by 1 point on the composite and 1 point on the sub-score. And the SAT score that you see for 2021 is the equivalent to that requirement on the ACT. That's only for the class of 2021. So for 2022, the requirements are going to go back up to what they were previously. So just make sure that students and families are aware of the difference. Additional eligibility requirements for Promise. Students must graduate from a West Virginia high school, and they do have to complete half of the coursework at a West Virginia high school. Exception to this is for military dependents and eligible commuters, but all other students do have to meet that requirement. They must also complete the core course requirements, which is 4 English, 4 math, 4 social studies, and 3 science credits to qualify for the Promise Scholarship. And we do confirm that they met the 50% requirement as well as the core course requirements on the grade file submission. They must also be a West Virginia resident at least 12 months before the application deadline to qualify for the Promise Scholarship. Additional eligibility requirements, of course, there are more for Promise. Students must apply within 2 years of high school graduation, and that time is extended if they are enlisted in the military. The 2-year time window is only for students who have not enlisted in college. So if they've enrolled in college and they didn't apply as a senior, they couldn't qualify at that point. So the only time they can actually apply within 2 years after high school graduation application is if they haven't previously been enrolled in college or aren't currently enrolled in college in that 2-year period. Option pathway students can qualify for the Promise Scholarship. They do have to meet the test score requirement, all the other requirements, as well as the GPA requirement for any class that they receive a letter grade in. And so that's the overall GPA and the core GPA as well. So to apply for the Promise Scholarship, students use the West Virginia Student Aid Management System, and we are planning on using that again this year. And they can use that system to apply, edit, or check the status of their scholarship. They need to make sure that they use the correct Social Security number. And if they don't use the correct Social Security number, that they don't reapply, then they know that they can go in and edit that information, because we match everything up related to the Promise Scholarship with the Social Security number. So please tell them, don't guess, try to get it right so we can make sure everything's correct for them within our system. So to apply, they will create a SAM account. They use their email address as their username. They create their own password. They enter a security question, and they use that, and they log back in to apply. Once they get through the application completely, they do get to the confirmation page. So if they haven't made it to the confirmation page, then they haven't actually submitted their application successfully. So this will be what the new homepage looks like for Promise. And you can see this will be the link to the SAM system, and there's also a link above it. You can also see there's a link to the FAFSA as well as a link to the requirements right here, and then any forms that they need. They can also click the Apply Now button anytime they're on any program screen, and that will take them to this page. And so it'll be a lot easier for students to navigate. And if you haven't gotten in there yet, I suggest you can go in and play and look around and see what it looks like. But the programs are built very similarly, so you can find the information related to their application. And then this little thing down here, it says questions, ask Sam. We have had our chat bot for a few years, but a new thing that we have in our office is we have live chat now. And so between our office hours, if someone's available to chat, if they go in and they ask the chatbot a question and the chatbot can't answer, they will have the option to speak with a live representative, and that would be someone in our office, such as myself. So that's a cool new tool that we have. This is the Promise Scholarship application checklist. This is just something to be aware of that's offered under forms on the CFWV page. It literally has boxes for students to check to make sure that they're completing all the parts for them to apply for the Promise Scholarship. So it's a great tool to give your students. So this is what the SAM web page looks like. So when they click on that link, it takes them here. And then they start the process by clicking here if you do not have an account. This is where they create their account, and then they need to make sure that they log back into the system and actually submit the application. Once they submit the application, they get to the confirmation page. This is what it looks like. And it'll automatically be emailed to the email address that they provided. And then they also have the option when they're filling out the application to provide a secondary email address or a parent email address. And then that email will receive all the communications related to the Promise Scholarship as well. If they don't have this, when they go in and fill it out, they can go back in and add it if they want. And they can do that by editing their application. So if they log into their SAM system, they can go in and edit their application, and that's all the information. So if their Social Security number is wrong, anything is incorrect, they can go in and edit. The only thing they can't change is their email address, because that is their username. But if they need to change their email address, they can contact us, and we can certainly do that for them. They can also check their application status. So this is their application status on the drop-down, and then it'll show everything that we have on file for them from their ACT, SAT scores to the grades to the FAFSA. And it will also show whether or not they qualify at a certain point. So students have the power to go in and check their own status, so I would encourage them to do so. The other part on the SAM system that students can utilize is the ACT, SAT reporting. We just like to make sure that everyone realizes this is not official reporting of the ACT or SAT. We use this for matching purposes. So we have about over 10,000 applications in a typical year for the Promise Scholarship, and we receive every ACT and SAT score that is taken in the state of West Virginia. And so we do a lengthy matching process, but it doesn't always work. There are going to be errors and students are going to be missed. If they go in and they self-report their scores, we will make sure that we get the ACT and the SAT scores matched up within our system. There have been some changes with how often we receive scores, especially for the SAT. So we only receive them twice a year now. In the past, we used to get them about a month after the test for the SAT, and now we only get them in January and August. And so all the tests that are taken August through January are received in January, and then all the tests that are taken February through July are received at the end of July or maybe even August. So it takes a while for us to get official scores. Students cannot be awarded until official scores are received. For the SAT, we usually receive them about 6 to 8 weeks after the test is taken. So it's a shorter time period, but it can cause delays in a student being awarded because we do have to have official scores and they have to be matched up to the student's record in order for them to qualify for Promise. So keep that in mind for the students. So what happens if they qualify? A Promise Award includes an award covers tuition and mandatory fees at eligible schools up to $4,750 per year. If their tuition is less, they would receive the lesser amount. There is a limit of 4 semesters towards an associate degree program and 8 semesters towards a bachelor's degree program. Community service is encouraged, but it is not required. And students have 6 years to utilize a Promise Award after they are awarded, and that time is extended if they enlist in the military. Promise cannot be used outside of West Virginia. So we get the question 50 times a year. My major isn't offered in West Virginia, so can I take it out of state? The answer is no. You can't take Promise out of state for any reason, but you do have up to 1 year if you're awarded Promise to come back and utilize the award. If you don't come back within that 1 year time period, you do forfeit the scholarship. The key here is students need to apply. So they will have to apply and meet the deadlines when they are actually graduating in order to be eligible to get it if they do decide to come back in state. So if you have students who say they don't want to apply, they will be able, they don't want to apply because they're going out of state, I would encourage them to apply in case they would find they need to come back in state. If they wait too long, they won't be eligible to apply. They can apply late sometimes, but at a certain point, we do cut off their ability to apply for previous years. I see I got a question. Can we download this PowerPoint somewhere? I don't think at the moment you can, but we will certainly send it out after the presentation. And you can always contact me if you would like a copy of it as well. Promise renewal requirements. So for a student to maintain the eligibility after they're awarded, they have to have a certain cumulative GPA. So 2.75 the first year, 3.0 thereafter. This includes all college level courses, even dual credit courses that they've taken. They also have to earn 30 credit hours per year if they receive Promise for both fall and spring. If they only receive it for 1 semester, they have to get 15 credits in the academic year. The academic year is always going to start with the fall and end with the summer. So it goes fall, spring, summer, and they have to meet the credit hour requirement within that time period. So what's the counselor's role in all this? And I think there's always some confusion around that. The counselors are to help students actually file the Promise application and the FAFSA by the deadline. And we have an old date on there. So for this year, it would be March 1st, 2022. The other thing that you may help with is the grade file submission. So we depend on the counselors to submit the grades for 7th semester and for 8th semester. And we have an unofficial deadline of February 14th for that, to try to get your grade file submission in, because we won't get the file until every single high school in the state of West Virginia has submitted. So if one school is late, then it holds up the process for the whole state. So we can't do our matching process or our awarding process for any student at a public high school until every single school has submitted. So please try to get those in on time if that's part of your responsibility as a counselor. It does have to be submitted twice. And so it's submitted for 7th semester grades, and then it's also submitted for 8th semester grades at the end of the year after seniors have graduated. The other thing we ask that you do is just review FAMs for errors. So after we've received the 7th semester grade file, we will send an email out, and we send that out through the Department of Education as well as through our listserv that says, we've matched everything. We've done all we can do on our end. Now check to see if students qualify. Just make sure the students that do qualify are there. And if we're missing any information, let us know. If you've been a senior counselor in the past, there's nothing worse than having an award ceremony in April or May and a student is missed. And so we really try to prevent those students from being missed and not recognized in their award ceremonies by getting everything updated as early as we can. This is the Promise Scholarship Toolkit. We haven't updated it for 2022 yet, but I certainly will. We'll send that out through our office. It'll also be sent out through the Department of Ed. If you're new to this process, if we make any changes, they'll be included in there. But it does include everything related to Promise, and then step-by-step instructions on the grade file submission, so that PRM.DTA file submission report, as well as how to navigate FAMs and what are you looking at when you're looking at FAMs. So speaking of that, this is what FAMS looks like for a student. On this side, you would normally see student name, information, last name, first name, middle initial. Of course, we've cut it out of the presentation for privacy purposes, but just to give you an idea of what you would look at when you get into the FAM system. It shows everything related to their eligibility. The 50% requirement is listed here. It will be a Y if it is yes, and N if it is no. That comes from the grade file submission. Graduation date is self-reported. Students mess this up every year. So if they don't submit the graduation date as the current year, it will flag them in our system just so we can make sure that they're not a current college student and they do actually qualify. So make sure you check those. The ACT, SAT score, if we have it on file and it qualifies, it'll say okay. If we have it on file, it doesn't qualify, it says low. And then if we don't have any scores, it'll say no. If their application was filed on time, it'll say okay or late. If it is late, if they are eligible, it will show a yes, and it'll show a date. If they don't currently qualify, it will say no. Then whether or not we have the FAFSA, and then if there's an issue with the FAFSA, that would also be listed here. The residency is pulled from the FAFSA and their high school level. This is a big one. So this funky code right here that says not fresh one, when students fill out the FAFSA, if they indicate they're a current college student or they have had previous college credits, it will flag them. So they need to make sure that they get that updated on the FAFSA. And then finally, grades. If we have grades on file, they qualify, it says okay. If they don't qualify, it will say low. If we don't have grades, it will say no. Something we always like to touch on for the grade file submission. Okay, I see Heather's note. We will upload the PowerPoints and recordings on the landing page after the conference, so you'll have access to that as well. So this is a screenshot from the PRM.DTA or the grade file submission. And just to be aware, there's two parts to this. When you're looking at number one, that reviewed flag, that doesn't mean anything. All it means is you've actually checked that student. You agree that what is listed on the grade file submission is correct. So when you're checking that, you're not checking that a student qualifies for Promise. You're checking that you have reviewed them. Number two is the workload greater than 50%. Your verifying that the student completed 50% of their coursework at a West Virginia school, which is a requirement for Promise. So just be aware of that if you're the one filling out the grade file submission. Who determines eligibility for Promise? We do. So if we don't have any information on file for a student, they can't qualify. If they don't apply, they cannot qualify. So just make sure that you're aware that the grade file submission does not determine eligibility. It just notifies us of a student's eligibility related to their grades. They have to meet all the requirements to qualify, and we have to have the information in our office for them to be awarded. Also, not the college. So colleges will estimate on a student's financial aid package whether or not a student qualifies for certain financial aid programs. This is an estimate, and it'll usually say somewhere on there that it is an estimate. But again, they have to apply, and we have to have the information in our system for them to be awarded. So if you have questions on the Promise Scholarship, this is the information specifically related to Promise, and it comes to me for the Promise email. So just make sure you're sending those questions there specifically. Moving on to some of our other financial aid programs, and I'm sorry, there's some of the back parts of PowerPoint, so it makes it hard to see, but this is the higher ed grant program. To qualify for the West Virginia Higher Education Grant Program, you do have to file a FAFSA each year by April 15th. So for the Promise, you don't have to reapply, but for the higher ed grant, you have to submit the FAFSA every year to qualify for this award. This is West Virginia's need-based grant program. It's for students attending an eligible school in West Virginia. We do have a reciprocal agreement with some schools in Pennsylvania as well, but it can't be taken anywhere else. To maintain eligibility for this program, students have to get at least 24 credit hours in the academic year, and they do have to have a 2.0 cumulative GPA to renew. For the current year, 2021-22, students can receive up to $3,000. So it's a great amount of money for students to be able to utilize to go to school. The Underwood Smith Teaching Scholars Program. This is for students who are interested in pursuing a teaching degree and want to be a teacher in math, science, elementary ed, or special education. You can receive up to $10,000 per year for 4 years. So it's a $40,000 scholarship. To receive it, students have to agree to teach in West Virginia in one of these critical needs areas for at least 5 years after they graduate from college. So if they receive it, that's what they're expected to do. If they don't do that, then it becomes a student loan. And so this isn't a terrible thing because it still helps students be able to pay for college. And it has a lower interest rate than it would if they were to receive a private loan to try to go to school, or even a federal loan for them to pay for college. And so if they're interested in this, they change their mind, they don't fulfill that contract, it does become a forgivable loan, but the interest rate on it would be lower, so it would still be a great opportunity for students. We just got through our second cohort, so we did select an additional 25 students for the fall of 2021. This renews automatically if students maintain a 3.0 in college, and the application becomes available July 15th. So if you have students who are interested in this, it's a wonderful opportunity for students who want to become a teacher. Next, we have the Engineering, Science, and Technology Scholarship, and we call this the West Virginia STEM Scholarship. They can receive up to $3,000 per year. They do have to work full-time in a STEM field in West Virginia for 1 year for every year they receive the scholarship. They can also do an approved community service program to fulfill that service requirement as well. And again, this can become a student loan if they don't fulfill the terms of that. So they do have to be willing to repay the scholarship plus interest and any collection fees if they don't fulfill that requirement. The West Virginia Invest Grant, this is our last dollar in financial aid programs for students to pursue specific high demand fields at participating schools in West Virginia at 2- and 4-year institutions. All the 2-year schools do participate. Potomac State College is the only 4-year school that participates currently. Is the Underwood Smith interest rate locked, or does it change each year? It will be updated for each year. I think it is locked for the students who receive it after that point. But that's a good question. I'll have to ask on that. I'm not sure. I'm not for sure. So back to INVEST, the West Virginia INVEST grant program, it does cover tuition and some of the fees, which we'll go over a little bit more in depth in a second. Students have to fill out the INVEST application and FAFSA before the start of the term to qualify for this program. We have a priority deadline of April 15th, so I recommend students try to start this process early if they do want to receive this, because there are several steps for them to have West Virginia INVEST. And if they start like the week before school starts, they're not going to be able to get through all those steps to qualify for this particular program. They have to meet all the requirements to qualify, including being a resident, have a high school diploma, not be in default, be a U.S. citizen. It's only for students who don't have a previous degree or they haven't attempted 90 or more credits per year. They do have to be enrolled in an eligible major at a participating institution, so it can't be taken anywhere. It's only for those specific programs, and they must maintain satisfactory academic progress. Each year, students have to complete each semester they receive the award, they have to complete 2 hours of community service during the term. They also have to reside in West Virginia for 2 years after they're no longer enrolled half-time or they finish school, or else this becomes a loan as well. So this requires students to complete a promissory note, as our other programs do as well, if it can become a student loan, because it will disclose all the information related to the interest rates, just so they're aware before they actually receive those funds. New parts of this: tuition mandatory fees and academic program fees can be covered. So previously, all the academic program fees weren't covered. They do have to be approved, but a lot of them will be included in that now as well. Also new, students only have to take the drug screening once per year. So that last year they had to take it before each semester, and so they just have to take it before the first term that they're actually receiving the funds, and they can still receive it. If they fail the drug screen, they can still receive the INVEST grant for that semester. If they fail it a second time, they'll be required to go through a drug rehabilitation program to receive funds in the future or for that particular term. So this is a change. They won't be penalized. If they fail it, they can still receive the funds. And they only have to take it once during the year. So that'll certainly be a lot easier for a lot of the students to be able to receive it. The West Virginia Nursing Scholarship Program, and this is for all levels of nursing, LPN all the way up to a doctorate. The application goes live for this April 15th, and the deadline's June 1st, so it'll be the same next year for the class of 2022 as well. Students do have to be halfway through their program in order to receive this, and so it wouldn't necessarily be for seniors, but it's something for them to be aware of if they do plan to go into a nursing field. We're also working on a collaboration with Workforce West Virginia. So students who are in the nursing program, if they graduate, they'll help them find a job. Is the change in drug screening frequency for West Virginia as permanent? Yes, so it would be from now on. That would be the policy. So unless something changes on our end or from the legislature, that will be it going forward. Back to the nursing scholarship. So this can also become a forgivable loan. So depending upon the level that a student receives this, they do have to fulfill a service requirement by working in the field for so long, or it can become a forgivable loan. Award amounts vary each year based upon the availability of funds. And last year they went from $800 to $4,000 per semester. So it's a great scholarship as well for students. We're almost done, so I'm going to go a little bit quickly because I know we're running out of time, and I want you to be able to ask some questions if you have them. The HEAPS grant, there's two parts to the HEAPS grant. This is for students who want to attend on a part-time basis. For 2021, they can receive $243 per credit hour. If they want to attend on a part-time basis, this is a need-based scholarship program, and to apply, they just need to contact their school. The HEAPS workforce program, the application became available on July 1st. This is for students who or attending a vocational school or one of the community and technical colleges for a short-term training program like mining, gaming, LPN, medical training, something like that. So it does have to be an approved program as well. And students must file the FAFSA and complete the application. And again, they should contact their school's financial aid office if they're interested in this program. We do have other programs that we offer from the Higher Ed Policy Commission, and you can certainly find all that information on our new website, College for West Virginia, including the Choose West Virginia Practice Program, Medical Student Loan, Health Sciences Service Program, and Mental Health Loan Repayment Program as well. And the other one I'll mention is the Underwood Smith Teacher Loan Repayment Program. This is for teachers or counselors in high needs areas, and those are listed by the critical need area. If you work in a certain county, you can have up to $3,000 in student loan debt canceled annually if you agree to work in that area for 2 years. And so that's a great program as well. And that application opened July 1st. And so it is available currently for 2021-22. Program managers in our office, if you ever have questions related to any of our programs, feel free to reach out. We're happy to help in any way that we can. And again, here's my information. And I'm a financial aid manager here, and I oversee the Promise Scholarship specifically. So if you deal with that, you'll likely be speaking with me at some point in the near future for seniors. And now I'm going to open it up for questions if anybody has any. We have a few minutes.
Well, Tana, as folks enter their questions, I just want to go ahead and take a moment to say thank you so much for joining us today. Did a job covering a lot of information in a relatively short amount of time. An hour is it seems like a long time, but it's a short amount of window to cover all the different ins and outs and intricacies of the financial aid process. So thank you very much. Are there any questions from our audience? Before we let Tana go, we have just about 4 minutes remaining. And as you're typing your questions in and kind of wrapping things up, bear in mind that this next session immediately backs this one up. So the next session is going to open up basically right now. They're probably already opening. And they'll last just 30 minutes. The last session of the day is just a 30-minute burst session. So one last one before we cut you loose and let you go get some dinner and have a break this evening. So
okay. I think we do have a question.
Okay.
So can one use the Underwood Smith retroactively after they've been employed with the school? If you're referring to the TLAP aspect of it, the one that we said they could be reimbursed, they do have to work there in the future. But if they're currently a teacher or counselor in one of those areas, they can apply for it and they'd be able to receive it now. For our new Underwood Smith Teaching Scholars Program, that is only available to seniors who are actually applying. So if they're already in school, they wouldn't be eligible for that, unfortunately. Absolutely. If they need help with financial aid over the phone, the number listed, the 304-558-4618, is our financial aid hotline, and that is at the state office. And there's also a federal number, which is 1-800-4FED-AID. So it's 4FEDAID or 433-3243. So there's a federal helpline number and also a state financial aid number. What portion of the Underwood Smith did you say? Something the TLAP program. So that's what we call it here in our office. But that's where you can have some of your student loan debt canceled if you're a teacher and you currently have student debt and you're willing to work in one of those high needs, critical needs fields. Thank you, Amy.
Tana, I have to run. I have a session starting right now. So thank you again. If anyone has any direct questions for Tana, you can always use the @ @Tana or direct message via the system. As she shared her email address and contact information as well. So thank you all for joining us and have a great evening.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.